Shalom, this is David Ben Shaul. I'm going to be starting my next lesson on the 4 levels of existence. I don't know if you recall, but in the introduction that I did a few days ago, I actually touched on this subject where it was dealing with the soul, the intellect, the emotions, and also action. And basically what it is we as human beings do have a spiritual side to ourselves, which is the soul, and obviously a physical side to us. And in reality, we interact with the creation we've been given through these 4 levels. So what I'd like to do is actually start with verses and kind of show everybody who's listening to this that there is biblical support for what I will be teaching here. This is probably going to be a couple of lessons since we're limited to 10-minute segments, so I'll definitely be doing at least 2 segments of this. I chose the book of Deuteronomy for the most part. In fact, I will be dealing with the book of Psalms entirely, but there is one exception where I will be dealing with the book of Deuteronomy. And the reason I chose Psalms is because Psalms is a book. It's a very down-to-earth type of a book. It deals with man's, in particular David, for the first few dozen Psalms. Dealing with the difficulties of life and a Torah observance at the same time. So I figured this would be a good spot to start. So let me go to the very first section. And what I did was, being, as I said, there's the soul, there's the intellect, there's the emotions, and then there's the action part of ourselves, where we make things happen in the physical realm. So what I did was, for soul, I simply looked up the soul. I went through a concordance and pulled out verses that dealt with the soul directly. So here you go. We have Psalms. I'm going to read some of these. I'm not going to go into any great detail about the verses. I simply want to give you a flavor, or just a simple introduction of verses that are in our Bibles that do support what I'll be teaching. So when I'm dealing with the 4 levels of our existence, it's not something that I just pulled out of the air. It is there. The pattern is set. It is there. All I'm doing is I'm compiling it into a lesson. Now 74:19 says, I turn to the verse here, says, do not deliver the soul of your turtle dove to the wild beast. Do not forget the life of your poor forever. So there's a simple verse. It states that there is a soul. And obviously the speaker here is saying that they've got a soul. And they're asking the Creator, please, take care of that soul. Now let's go to Psalm 116. 116:7. And let's see, 116:7. Here we go. 116:7 says, return my soul to your rest, for Hashem has been kind to you. Okay? Another one, the soul of the person. The person is asking for the soul to be given rest. Now, why? I'm going to touch on this verse for 1 second. Why are they looking for a rest? Why are they speaking of a rest here? Well, it's very simple. The reason they're speaking of a rest is because the soul has turmoil. It is constantly in conflict with the desires of the body. So it's looking for a rest. Peace for once. All right, let's go to Psalm 119. Now, Psalm 119 we're going to be going to a few times here. And Psalm 119 is actually about Torah. And it's its benefits and its effect on a person's being. So Psalm 119 is a key, absolute key passage in understanding Torah and its benefits to us through our adherence and following of it. It says, Psalm 119, 167, my soul kept your testimonies, and I loved them very much. It's taught that, believe it or not, it's actually taught that the soul is something that is very pure, and it keeps to the desires of the Creator, even though the rest of our body does not want to. That's why we have a conscience that tells us when we're doing something wrong, that we know it's wrong. That's why we don't have an excuse about many things, about doing things that are wrong. And we instinctively know about some things that are right that we should do. All right, let's move on. Next one is our intellect level. And I looked up the word mind in this. Now, understand that I only have 2 verses here. There's a lot more. I just selected a few here and there. In fact, if you take a look at the entire Tanakh, that's commonly known as the Old Testament, and you look up this word mind, you will have many, many, many occurrences of this word. Okay, now let's go back to 26 now, for chapter 26, verse 2 of Psalms. And we will find, I'm doing this the old-fashioned way, I'm actually reading it out of something printed on paper. It says, examine me, Hashem, and test me. Scrutinize my intellect. Actually, in this particular version, does use the word intellect. Some will say my mind and my heart. Now, heart we'll cover later on. Heart is actually your emotions. So, it's saying examine me, scrutinize me. My intellect, my heart. In other words, my soul's in order, but my heart and my mind need to be, brought into a proper order. So now let's go on to Psalm 106, verse 7. 106. Verse 7. Just so you understand, I'm actually reading out of Art Scroll. I really enjoy their translations. Okay, 106:7 says, our fathers in Egypt did not contemplate your wonders. Contemplate is meditate. They were not mindful of your abundant kindness, and they rebelled by the sea, at the sea of reeds. Now understand that our heart needs to be in control, or I should say controlled by our mind. We live in a society where our heart, our emotions, control the mind. And that's when we get in trouble. We actually have to reverse that. So, these 2 verses deal with the mind. Now let's move on. Now we're going to the emotions. And to look up the emotions, we look for heart. Alright, I was getting some things in order here. In the heart. I'm going to have to stop in a few moments and continue on. Now the heart is the emotions, as I was saying before. And the emotions is very powerful. It's where our desires are seated. And this is where man fails. This is where man decides that he wants to do his own thing in spite of what he knows he should do, in spite of God's will. So we'll be dealing with this very shortly in our next segment.